Yo, what up, CCHers? It's Zach, coming at you with a video on Psalms and Proverbs, and just want to say, man, I miss you guys. I so wish I could be around you guys some more. Um, Man, it feels like it's been almost. I mean, it's been almost a month, but it feels like it's been way longer, and I can't believe we still have 2.5 months until school starts. But I'll make it through. I miss you guys though. I really do. I love all of you. But hey, thanks for tuning in. A little bit about me right now. Um, yeah, summer's getting started. I got a job at the local YMCA where I'm going to be a camp leader for the summer. And it's a pretty sweet gig, so I'm very excited about it. But yeah, I'm also going to be around home. My family at the end of July is going to be taking a trip to South Africa for a couple of weeks. So I'm very, very excited about that. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to. And also this summer, I got a couple buddies in the area from my hometown who are trying to start a college Bible study for all the different college kids who are coming home for the summer. So we're working on getting that thing started, but prayers for that. And I think it's gonna be pretty cool. It's got a lot of potential. So um, that's mostly what's going on with me. Nothing much right now. My job doesn't start for a few weeks, so I'm just chilling. Um, but yeah, I want to get into Psalms and then Proverbs. So I'm going to be talking about Psalms 3 and 16, and then Proverbs 4 and 5. So I'm going to start with Psalm 3 and 16. I'll give you a chance right now. I'm not going to read all the way through them. So I'm going to give you a chance right now. Read 3 and 16 right now if you get the chance. Go ahead and pause. It doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, so now I'm going to talk. Hopefully you already read it. Now I'm going to talk about Psalm 3 and 16. And both of these have to deal with David in a really tough time in his life. It's pretty apparent when you read them. Um, I mean, 3, it straight up says in my Bible that he's fleeing from his son Absalom, which at that time his son Absalom was trying to kill him because he wanted to be king. And 16, it's just, I mean, it's kind of obvious that he's going through a pretty rough time. Um, and I think that that's kind of interesting how he writes, how he organizes his psalms. So I kind of want to run through that real quick. So first of all, he starts off the psalm talking about the trouble that he's going through. He puts it out there, and I think that that's fair. Like he's going in and he's saying, "Lord, I got this on my heart. I just gotta tell you." So he goes in and he writes, "Lord, how many are my foes?" In Psalm 3. How many are rising against me? In Psalm 16, he says, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge." Um, he's saying, Lord, I need help right now. I don't. How can I do it by myself? I cry aloud to the Lord, and He answers me from His holy hill. And then he gets into what I think is the better part of the psalm when he gets to the end of it, because in both of the psalms, if you look at it, in both of them, he finishes by talking about God, which you would expect, especially from a psalm, but in a specific way. He does it by talking about the promises that God has for his people, which I think is really cool. So in Psalm 3, he finishes, he's talking all about the troubles and everything, and he says, "Arise, O Lord, save me, O God, for you strike down my enemies." And then verse 8, the very last verse, he says, "Salvation belongs to the Lord, your blessing be on your people," which is a guarantee. He knows a promise from God that his blessing will be on his people. And David was able to see this. He was able to see at that time that God was giving blessing to his people. The king of God's people, I mean, he definitely would have seen a lot of the blessings, and he was able to show God. He said, "Lord, here I am. I'm a faithful servant, Lord. I'm going through a rough time. Give me your promises," which I think that's awesome. Um, and then we get to 16, and it ends. I'm going to start at verse, where was I going to start? 8? Yes. He says, "I have set the Lord always before me because he's at my right hand and I shall not be shaken." He's saying, Lord, I've set you before. I've lived for you. And then he says, "Therefore my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure," which is weird because he had just been talking about how there's a lot of things going on and how in a really tough time in his life. And yet he talks about the promises that God and how he feels safe and secure and how he knows that salvation belongs to the Lord and how he gives it to his people. And I think that this kind of it relates to us even more so because we know that God lives inside us even and he lives amongst us. And when we gather as a group of believers, which I'm missing right now, when we gather, we can see God's promises and God's blessings to us. And when God gives us those blessings, it's even more evidence that he's going to give us the other promises, which along with that comes peace and comfort, which is what David had even at a time when his son was trying to kill him. So we can rest in even a more secure peace because I don't know, we have the Lord literally with us. David didn't even have the words of Romans where it says, if God is for us, who can be against us? He just knew it. And we have those words from God. So I think that that's a really, really cool, first of all, that David saw that back then, but also that that. We have the same hope that he had while his son was going to try to kill him. We have that same hope, even to a greater level, I would say. Um, but I want to talk about a little bit more about some of the fruit that David tried to present to the Lord, because he said, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel, and this is for Psalm 16, verse 7 and 8, and he says, I've set the Lord always before me because he's at my right hand. So he's talking about some of the things that he's done for the Lord, not as much for bargaining chips, which is kind of what it sounds like, but more so like, Lord, I'm showing you like I've done this for you. Lord, at least take this into consideration or hear my prayers. Um, and that's some of the fruit that he's trying to show. And I think that that relates pretty closely with the Proverbs verses that we're going to talk about. So go ahead and flip over to Proverbs. We're going to be talking about chapter 4 and chapter 5 today. So I'm going to start with chapter 4. Go ahead and read that one first. You can read them both, but when you're reading chapter 4, look specifically for the two paths in verses 10 through 19 in chapter 4, because I think that's pretty interesting. So, yeah, the two paths, verse 10 to 19. Yeah, go ahead and read that. Pause the video. Okay, if you're back now, yeah, so we're going to talk about chapter 4. I'm going to do this. I love chapter 4 so much. So chapter 4 starts off with the father's instruction to his sons, which it talks a lot about like relatively short-term wisdom, I think. I'm just gathering that based on kind of the flow of the chapter. I'll talk about that later. But so it's talking a lot about, first of all, the father is encouraging his son, have wisdom. It's let's see, how does he say it? For I give you good precepts, I do not forsake my teaching. Let your heart hold fast to my words. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget, and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. He's begging him. I have so much for you. Accept my wisdom. And he talks about a little bit. He talks about the blessing that a good spouse is. Especially, he's talking about a wife. What a blessing that is. And then he gets to verse 10, and this is where it talks about the two paths that I was talking about. And I think this is interesting, the two paths, because you'll see this pattern a lot throughout Proverbs. So I kind of wanted you to focus on that. You see the path of the wicked, and you see the path of the wise. And I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting that it talks about all these decisions being either one or the other. So I have been recently, since I've been reading this, kind of looking at my own decisions and just regular decisions that I make throughout the day, and just going back and looking at them and evaluating a little bit, like, was that a wise decision or was that a wicked decision, and or foolish maybe. And I mean, there's a lot of times where there are foolish decisions, but there are also wise decisions. And there's some decisions where I don't have enough information yet whether or not it was wise or foolish, or and we'll see. But I think it's healthy to go back and to evaluate a little bit. And I encourage you to do that a little bit. Just go back and look at your past few days, and even if it's just some minor decision, just go back and evaluate and build on that. I think that's healthy, and don't beat yourself up over it, but just learn a little bit, and I think that's fine. Um, and then we get into the end of chapter 4, which talks about having a heart of wisdom, which is a little bit more long term. That's more of the purpose for why we have wisdom and why we do the things that we do that are weird according to the world standards. Um, and it's because it's not because, I mean, we have head knowledge and we know that doing the right thing will help us out, like help us out, like it'll help us. But also because of what we have already from God. That's why we do the things that we do. That's the true source. So that's what it's talking about with the heart of wisdom. So focusing on that, that's really important. And then chapter 5 is all about sexuality and adultery, and it's actually, I think, a pretty beautiful passage that talks about the blessing that sexuality is. But if you just read the first 5 verses, you wouldn't get that, um, because it starts off like terrible. It makes it sound like yeah, especially reading as a guy. I'll be honest, I read that and that's like, man, I don't want to talk, I don't want to risk that. But then you get to the second half of the, or even most of the rest of the chapter, and it's talking about how beautiful sexuality is and what a blessing it is. And um, yeah, it's a really beautiful passage. um, I don't have much to say on this, I'll be honest, but I do think that it's a really wonderful passage that talks about the great blessing. It shows the great blessing, but also the great curse if used incorrectly. So I think that's even more um, wisdom that we can have to know that we better make the right decision, especially on that issue, being that they took a whole chapter just for the issue of sexuality. So better be something that we take serious. But hey, I appreciated you all checking in. Yeah, to give my 2 cents on these chapters. If you want to reach out to me, I love if you need my number or something, DM me on GroupMe or something. I don't care. Put a comment in the video. I'll probably check it in a week. But um, yeah, loved looking through this, and yeah, great to talk to you guys. Hope to see you all soon. Yeah, we'll see you later. Peace.